Now I'd like to take some time to look at the aspects of 4th edition that really shine. If you are DM, 4th edition is your friend. I will never forget the first encounter I DM'd in 4th edition. It was against kobolds. Generic, really, I know, but that was the point. I wanted to try a creature that had been so bland in 3.5. I remember thinking that the monsters felt simple, yet complex, all at the same time. They had enough variety to make them interesting and fun to play, but not an overwhelming amount. It was elegant. I was able to use more monsters, and the encounter felt more robust because there was more going on. Movement was more tactical, the characters and the monsters all had interesting and unique options. The combat felt more alive. It didn't take long for me to notice that encounter building, XP distribution, and monster building were so much more user-friendly. I heard critics say that 4th edition was too simple, but I say that was a misdiagnosis. 4th edition had made the game simpler to implement. I felt freed up as a DM, and suddenly I had more room to breathe, to focus on building encounters, interesting terrain, and stories. You see, 4th edition didn't take away from the amount of energy or mental ability I had to spend DMing. It merely let me shift away from the more arbitrary and time-consuming methods and onto constructive and creative efforts. Anyone who's ever DM'd 3.5 and built monsters, statted NPCs, figured challenge rating versus encounter level, calculated XP, and other such tasks knows what I'm talking about here. I could see early on that 4th edition was built much more intentionally than 3.5. A lot of 3.5 felt like Wizards of the Coast was trying to take somebody else's old mechanics and make them work better. It was like that they were trying to restore and remodel an old car that, despite the many improvements, would still be, at its core, just an old car. With 4th edition, I could tell they decided to build a new car, with similar parts and the experience of the previous one, but a new car. The core building blocks of 4th edition are fundamentally more solid because they are designed with a more coherent system. A good example of that is the challenge rating system of 3.5. A monster's challenge rating doesn't come from any core system. It is simply a judgment call made by the designers. So, for example, a monster could be a level 30 Fae, but only have a challenge rating of 16. It all goes back to the reliance that everything has to be the same rules as the player characters, and that's a flaw. If a monster has to fulfill a different role in the game than the players, why should it be built with the same rules? In 4th edition, monsters are built from the get-go with their function in mind. The special part or parts that the monster plays in an encounter gets a lot more attention, whereas before, the monster was just, hey, here's this guy, and he just has some hit points and an attack, and throw some spells in from the player's handbook, and he goes out there and he tries to hit the players, and I think he'll challenge a party of 8th level characters, but he himself is like level 13. Races matter. In 3.5, by the time you were mid-level, your race was pretty much just an afterthought when it came to what your character did during adventures. Now, as a lover of storytelling, as you all know, I don't want to send the wrong message here. Your race could matter on the story side of things, but the few character build features that your race gave you, the small racial bonuses and whatnot, soon became trivial. So, I always wished the character's race mattered more in terms of interacting with the challenges and conflict resolution, which is a huge part of D&D. So it was so refreshing to open the pages of the 4th edition Player's Handbook and see that each race was good, each was viable, and had at least one interesting and effective power they could use every encounter. And they stayed relevant throughout the whole adventuring career. The races felt like heroes, and they were unique. Character classes for a my era. Admit it, We live in a time and place where the focus is on you. It's popular because it appeals to us. As humans, we live for our emotions, our experiences, and for stories. We love telling stories, and we love being part of a story. Everywhere I look, services and goods are made to be customizable for the consumer to get them the way that they want. Options and personalization abound. By the clang of Moradin's steel balls, we are on YouTube here, a website where anyone can have a channel and make original custom content to appeal to niche viewers. 4th edition is the fantasy gaming iteration of that. Gone are the days of this class gets X, Y, Z, and that's the class. Now you build the class the way you want. Each class has a role, and many critics say, "Oh, that's just so constraining to get labeled like that." Shut up. The fighter was always the defender, taking monsters on toe-to-toe. The wizard was always the controller, slinging bursts of ice and fire and sleep and sticky webs and enchantments. The cleric was always the party's leader, keeping the party together, figuratively and literally, and smiting the villains. And the rogue was always the striker, the skillful guy who could stab someone's face off. Except now, he can sneak attack reliably, instead of spending the entire encounter frustrated out of his mind because, again, he's fighting undead, oozes, elementals, plants, or constructs, or enemies that have concealment. That's right, concealment would keep you from sneak attacking. Besides, if you are at all savvy with 4th edition, you know that each class has 1 or 2 secondary roles, which you can build your character to lean towards, or not. I've seen fighters that are pure defender, fighters that are awesome at defending and dealing damage, and fighters that are more striker than anything. And speaking of fighter, that's right, you, the fighter. I could almost cry. You are finally good. Really good. You were so boring and generic in 3.5, and now you are so thematic and effective. My entire life I have played druids and wizards and elves, and for the first time of any gaming system ever, the fighter actually appeals to me and is fun and dynamic to play. And if all of that doesn't seem like enough customization, play a multi-class character, or a hybrid character, or a hybrid multi-class character, or just play a damn bard. Speaking of classes that are good now, the bard is good and really interesting. Half-elf bard is something of a joke in 3.5. In 4th edition, half-elf bard is superb. I don't want to beat this point to death, but I will say every class in 4th edition is effective. No class has to multi-class to be worthwhile. They all have a variety of options going on in combat. This ain't Dungeons and Clerics anymore. So, another liberating aspect of 4th edition is that you no longer have to rely upon a cleric. You can now build parties without one. As well, you no longer have to stock up on tons of cheesy healing potions and wands of cure moderate wounds to fix people in between encounters. Every leader class is effective. Warlords can heal, yes, but they focus more on tactics and supporting the other characters. Bards add interesting magical effects that help allies and trip up the enemies, and they're definitely a leader-controller mixed role. Besides that, every character has second wind and healing surges, so they can rest and invigorate a limited number of times per day. Some classes, such as the fighter and my awesome character who is a Goliath Infernal Warlock Barbarian, can really take care of themselves. In fact, one of my groups recently did an entire 12th level adventure without a single healer in the 5-person party. We played smart, we played to our strengths, my character is awesome, and no one died. It was a big challenge, but we pulled it off. Never a boring level. This is a small but very fond point for me here. Every single level in 4th edition brings something interesting. Never is there a level where you get nothing but hit points. At the least, you will get a new power. At the most, you'll get like a feat, an ability score increase, and a power, or you'll reach a new tier of play. Never a gotcha, you're dead moment. Kinda. Touch of death. Fort saving throw. Oh, you failed. I'm afraid you are now dead. And we all know what Ray of Disintegrate did. Now this is another sort of sensitive area. Some people feel it hurts the realism and challenging nature of the game to remove such harsh and powerful effects. I can understand that to a degree. But the flip side is that we are playing a game here to have fun. If the monsters and traps can challenge you sufficiently without there having to be such things as succeed on this roll or your character is dead, then isn't that preferable? I mean, we're not sadists here, are we? Right? And really, can anyone honestly say that they've ever enjoyed hearing, okay, you failed your saving throw, so you take 20 points of strength drain and you're frozen with fear, pissing your pants, and puking in your helmet for the next 15 rounds. Having said all of that, there are still plenty of nasty, nasty things waiting out there for the characters. I can say, without any pride or douchebaggery, that a recent dungeon of mine produced 2 total party kills plus 1 additional PC death. Aside from that, I have seen plenty of characters bite the big one. Oh, and there are a few death effects still out there. You just have to fail like 2 or 3 saving throws before you croak. The art. I've always loved the artwork of D&D, and it's been a big part of the game for me. 4th edition has been so fulfilling in this area. Not only has the artwork been upped a notch in terms of quality, but it feels more alive, more vivid. A lot more of the pieces feel like something out of a scene, as opposed to simply an image in a vacuum. Anyone who's been with this YouTube channel knows that one of my dreams is to someday get my artwork into a D&D book. The art of these books is something that I always spend a lot of time looking over, and I always watch for new pieces from artists that I really like. So, just to give you an idea, some of the cool pieces that you can find in these books here. I've been advised it's probably not good for me to show copyrighted images in the video, so I'm just showing you these books that I have purchased. They are awesome, aren't they? Truly amazing stuff.